let's go with our next presentation. I see he is behind stage. He's ready to go. Lantern Pharma. It's ticker LTRN. And we have joining us from Lantern Panna Sharma. He's CEO and president. And there he is. How's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. It is our pleasure. I'll let you have the floor, sir.
Great. Thank you. Well, Lantern, we're publicly traded on NASDAQ, ticker LTRN. And we're one of a handful of companies that is at the forefront of using big data and artificial intelligence to help accelerate the pace and lower the cost of drug development, specifically in oncology. I think everyone knows that developing oncology medicines takes a lot of time, takes a lot of capital, and historically has been fairly inefficient, with a success rate for drugs of less than 5%. And much like AI and data have done for many other industries, we believe that it's going to completely crush the product development cycle in drug discovery and drug development, and smash the cost from the nearly $3 billion it takes today to bring an oncology medicine to market to eventually, I think, a tenth of that cost. But at the same time, there's so much data available from collaborators, from patients, from centers, from studies being done. And all this data helps us understand really how drugs and tumors will interact or not interact. And we believe that we can use and generate models that help us then accelerate drug development. And that's the core of what we're doing. And the way we're doing it in medicine, there's a real need, because if you take a look at the ROI in the top 15 pharma, this is a study that Deloitte puts together every year. In 2019, their ROI on internally generated programs was less than 1%, if you can believe that. Last year, it was 1.7%, several orders lower than their cost of capital. And our AI platform helps to really, we think, solves the fundamental industry problem, which is you see strong therapeutic effect early on, but it gets diluted because you really don't understand how to specify the patient group that's most likely to be responsive to your drug. Our platform does that. The second biggest issue is that there are specific genetic weaknesses or targeted molecular mechanisms that we have an idea about early on in development, but we don't really use them in later development. And so with our platform, you can really address and understand how to exploit these molecular weaknesses in specific cancers. And so our platform solves what I think are two of the most fundamental problems in cancer drug development. And because of this, I think there have been a lot of really exciting companies like Lantern, like many others. And we think that the pace of innovation is only going to increase. I talk a lot about how this is going to usher in a new golden age of medicine because of AI, where computing and storage and the consumers willing to share data and the rise of sequencing is going to generate all kinds of new types of medicines and therapies, and also allow us to repurpose therapies that historically have gone abandoned or failed. And that's what our business model does. We use our AI platform, Radar, to take drugs that fell short of statistical significance, but also develop new compounds, and then understand really how and where they work best, and then launch them into clinical trials. And these trials go after specific populations. Sometimes we get orphan designation. We got 2 of those last month, one in GBM, one in pancreatic. And it allows us to have, I think, save tens to hundreds of millions of dollars per phase of trial, and substantially de-risk the drug because we understand where and how it works. So our platform, we've talked about it reaching over 8 billion data points this year. We're on track to do that. Last year, we reached 1 billion, so that's a pretty substantial increase. When our company went public last year in June of 2020, we were at about 275 million. So you can imagine from 275 to now 8 billion in Q4, this will be a very large increase. And this increases the scientific value of the company by better understanding all the mechanisms in various cancers. In fact, we were just having a call right before I came on one of those mechanisms and seeing how we could exploit that mechanism actually in other cancers. And then also it increases patient value because we can improve their outcome with reduced costs and reduced economic burden. And by specifically understanding the kind of patients that are going to benefit, we can get them into trials faster. We announced a collaboration just yesterday with Deep Lens to find, in fact, very specific patients, never smokers, that are chemo naive, that have failed TKI therapy, with non-small cell lung cancer adenocarcinoma subtype. So not only did we rescue that drug using AI and data, we're also now finding the patients for our trials using AI and data. So that kind of pipeline, we think, can totally reduce the cost and bring drugs to market faster. So this is our pipeline today. We have 2 programs in phase 2, one in metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer. We had an initial readout a few months ago, the first third of the patients, and it showed a very noted improvement in overall survival. We have another program in non-small cell lung cancer that I just talked about, where we're beginning to enroll sites. We expect this to be an 80 to 90 person trial in non-small cell lung cancer, which is a massive market opportunity just in never smokers, which are 20% of the population, and almost $3 billion are spent today, maybe slightly more, in therapies for never smokers. Pancreatic cancer, we're actually presenting today and tomorrow at the AACR Virtual Pancreatic Conference. We've got some tremendous data with our collaborator from Fox Chase. And then in GBM and other CNS cancers that we're working on in collaboration with Johns Hopkins. When we went public a year ago, a little over a year ago, we had 3 programs. Today we have 8 programs. And usually it takes years and costs tens of millions of dollars even to get to early stage named programs. We've, again, gone from 3 to 8 with a fairly de minimis burn rate. Our molecules, we've got, are all mostly small molecule except for one, which is a antibody drug conjugate. And we're addressing markets that we believe are very significant. Over nearly 500,000 patients worldwide today and growing, and several $1 billion in market opportunity. I'll talk a little bit about each one of the programs. LP100, it's an existing phase 2 program. 9 patients out of the 27 have been treated. The overall survival has been a little north of 12 and a half months, which is a noted improvement over other fourth-line treatments. This is about a $700 to $800 million spend globally, and really there's no great therapy for these late-stage patients. Their average survival is about 6 to 7 months today. So we think this drug not only can be a great opportunity in this market, but we've actually now uncovered how this drug works in a few other cancers as well. We published on that last year. Our second drug, as I mentioned, LP300, very targeted agent, disrupts by binding to specific cysteines on proteins, and these proteins are involved in non-small cell lung cancer pathways. And so this was a drug that failed historical trials, but we've now figured out how and where it works, and it tends to work really in never smokers. And so in never smokers, this drug has improved survival by about 100 to 125%. So if you take a look at never smokers on the far right of your screen, you can see the data on which we're basing our trial. For all patients, this is a cohort of 288, you see it had a very slight increase in survival, not significant enough. But in never smokers, 125% increase in 2-year survival, and actually a 100% increase in overall survival. Our third drug, LP184, this is a drug that works across a number of solid tumor cancers, and it's a very potent agent. We filed a number of patents in pancreatic, GBM, ATRT. We have signatures that correlate to how and where it works. So this has been a drug totally generated and guided by AI from day one. This is a totally new drug, and it also crosses the blood-brain barrier. From all of our early stage work, we've actually gotten some great collaborations with leading research institutions, and that's part of our strategy actually, is to work with leading KOLs. And so we're working with Fox Chase in pancreatic, Hopkins in brain cancers, and Georgetown in prostate cancer. Our GBM data, which we shared, and we got FDA granted us orphan drug designation for gliomas and GBM and other malignant gliomas. Let me just share some of the data that we're excited about. So if you take a look at this, we had this in 2 very different groups of mice, and people cure cancer in mice all the time, so it's another one of those slides. But in this case, it's a little different because we got complete regression with just 4 doses, and this wasn't even dose optimized. So if you take a look on the left, after 4 doses on every other day, days 15 through 21, there were no measurable tumors in these GBM model. We also did another model where we actually derived glioblastoma cancer cells from patients built those into neurospheres and planted those into mice. And this was all at Hopkins. And out of 3 out of the 4 mice, you saw complete regression. Actually, in all mice, you saw complete regression. Only 1 showed some tumor growth after dosing, and it was significantly lower. We found very similar great results preclinically also in pancreatic cancer. This work was done with Fox Chase. And there you saw that we dosed every week for 8 weeks, and the line in the green shows that we saw complete regression, significant rapid shrinkage and regression. So on the bottom, you see the tumors that were taken out of the mice, virtually nil, versus the tumors on top on the untreated mice, and they grew 146-fold. We also got orphan drug designation in this as well. So we've got some great preclinical data that we're going into the clinic with next year. And we expect by the end of next year, virtually all of our programs will be in clinical trials. How do we protect all of our ideas and insights and signatures and also the drug itself? Through patents. We have over 90 issued patents and pending applications across about 14 different patent families, including patent on our Radar AI platform. Again, some of the collaborations that we're involved with, these are important because they also give us access to data that powers our platform, and also patient insights, and that's really critical. What patients and what patient needs are there so that we can improve the standard of care or completely go over the hurdles that exist today. So we've gotten a lot of milestones for a small, young, growing team, and in fact, we'll also have later this year data. Today, actually starting today in pancreatic, next month in GBM, and the month after that in a totally new indication that we're pretty excited about in blood cancers using a new drug. I didn't talk about that today, called 284. And this is probably one of our youngest programs. So we're developing new insights. We're accelerating our existing drugs. We're continuing to grow our platform. It'll be over 8 billion data points. We believe we'll be there very soon. And we also have an ADC program that we'll be talking about. Again, we're publicly traded on NASDAQ. We've got about 80 million in cash and cash equivalents at the end of the June 30th quarter. Our burn rate was about 2.4 million that quarter. We expect that to increase as we go into trials, but we have enough capital on hand until into 2025. So I think at this market cap, we're a steal because we're trading at just barely over cash value. But more importantly, we've got multiple programs, any one of these programs that can be worth $1 billion to $3 billion. So thank you for taking some time and listening to our story.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Panna. A couple quick questions, if you don't mind. We got a few minutes here. Kind of a basic question, but where did the company name come from?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that. It's a wonderfully fitting name, to illuminate, light the path, lantern, all those wonderful things. But actually, the company name came from the source of the original drug, LP-100. Our first drug was originally sourced from a jack-o'-lantern mushroom.
Wow.
Yeah, so the jack-o'-lantern mushroom is very toxic, and it's been known in literature to have anti-cancer effects. So when they isolated this toxic substance, they thought initially it would have some medicinal properties, namely for bacteria and viruses. But then they also found it actually killed off cancer cells. They wanted to find out the mechanism, and they finally isolated that back in, I think, in the 70s. And it was done by some folks at UCSD. And then they finally isolated it further and further and found a very specific compound. LP-100 is a semi-synthetic derivative of that compound. And so as an homage to the mushroom itself, it was named Lantern Pharma.
Cool. I like that story. We might have to do a little Benzinga.com article on that story name. That's a cool one.
One of the most successful cancer drugs of all time came from the Japanese yew tree.
Okay.
Yes. There's a whole history of natural substances that lead to anti-cancer drugs. So
you had a nice slide up there. A couple slides back, you had, what 2021 has been like and what you're expecting for 2022. You said you're expecting a lot of the candidates to be in trials next year. I mean, give us a little teaser if you can. What does 2023 look like for Lantern?
I think we'll probably see a lot of partnering activity. Our business model is to focus on the innovation and develop, breakthrough ideas and then partner them out in later stage with bigger biotech and pharma.
Sure.
2023, we also expect significant progress on our antibody drug conjugate platform as well. On our antibody drug conjugate candidate, LPA18. And so that is, we're pretty excited about the progress we're making on that. So 2023, I think will be partnering our antibody drug conjugate and our 284 drug. But there are always new opportunities. I mean, our Insight, our radar platform, we've got probably 8 or 9 really exciting ideas that are very, very early. Really talk about that. Any one of those can gather more data and gather steam, and we can bring it into our named pipeline.
Sure. Well, we are looking forward to some updates from Lantern and from you, Panna. So thank you very much for joining us. Lantern Pharma, LTRN is the ticker, and this is Panna Sharma. He's CEO and president.
Thank you.